Imagine for a moment that you are a powerful king living inside a massive stone castle in the year 1200. It is the middle of the night. The fire in your chamber has burned low. The air is bitterly cold. And suddenly, your body demands attention. You might assume that royal status guarantees comfort, privacy, safety. It doesn't. You pull yourself from your warm bed and step barefoot onto frozen stone. Each step echoes as you walk down a narrow corridor carved deep into the castle wall. At the end of it is a small alcove, barely large enough to stand in. This is your bathroom. It's called a garderobe, a stone or wooden seat with a single hole cut straight through the floor, open to nothing but darkness and empty air below. The wind howls upward through the shaft, carrying a stench so powerful your eyes water instantly. There is no water, no pipes, no way to flush anything away. Everything simply falls, straight down, sometimes 50 feet, sometimes 100. You sit on the freezing surface and try not to think about what's beneath you, and you silently pray that the structure holds your weight. That fear is not paranoia. The wooden beams supporting these toilets were constantly exposed to moisture, waste, and rot. If a carpenter rushed the job, or the wood had weakened over time, the floor could give way without warning, with a sudden crack. There are recorded cases of nobles and servants plunging through toilet floors, falling down long vertical shafts into the cesspits below. Dying from the fall would have been a mercy, because surviving the fall meant drowning in human waste, in complete darkness, unable to climb out because the walls were slick with filth, screaming for help that would never come, because who checks the cesspit when someone goes missing? Some castles had shafts so deep that the sound of the impact couldn't even be heard from above. The garderobes at the Tower of London dropped waste into the Thames River below. If you fell there during high tide, the current could sweep you away before anyone knew you were gone. At Chepstow Castle in Wales, the garderobe shaft was built directly into the cliff face, a sheer drop of nearly 90 feet onto jagged rocks and the River Wye below. One slip, one rotted board, one moment of imbalance, and you're gone. But if this already sounds unreal, stay with me, because gravity was not even the most dangerous threat waiting for you in a medieval toilet. If you're enjoying this kind of dark, overlooked history so far, take a second to subscribe. It helps this channel grow and lets me keep making stories like this. And hit the bell icon, because trust me, this story gets darker. Now, here's the part no one tells you. Your enemies know exactly where you are. The toilet shaft is one of the only openings in a castle's defenses that leads directly into private living quarters. Assassins understood this. Enemy soldiers understood this. Castle walls were built to withstand battering rams, catapults, and siege towers. But the garderobe, that was a vulnerability hidden in plain sight, or rather, hidden in plain smell. Under the cover of darkness, daring men were willing to crawl through human waste for one reason: opportunity. Some climbed upward through the shaft itself, using the rough stone walls for grip, their hands and feet slipping on surfaces I won't describe, pulling themselves up inch by inch, their faces pressed against filth-covered walls. Others waited below, hidden in the pit, with a crossbow or a long spear, patient, silent, knowing that eventually their target would appear. There are legends that King Edmund II of England, known as Edmund Ironside, was killed while sitting on the toilet, stabbed below by an assassin hired by his rival King Canute. The assassin had hidden himself in the cesspit for hours, waiting, breathing through a cloth, covered head to toe in waste. And when Edmund finally sat down, the killer thrust a blade upward through the shaft. Imagine that moment. You're trapped in a narrow stone box. Your clothes are around your ankles. You cannot move. You cannot run. You cannot even stand without exposing yourself further. And then, without warning, steel rises from the darkness below. The medieval toilet was not a place of privacy. It was a tactical weak point, a vulnerability every lord and lady knew about but couldn't eliminate because everyone eventually had to use it. In 1203, during the siege of Château Gaillard in France, a small group of soldiers discovered that the castle's latrine chute emptied into an unguarded area. They climbed up through the toilet shaft, emerging inside the castle chapel. From there, they opened the gates, and the fortress fell. One of the most advanced castles in Europe, designed by Richard the Lionheart himself, was conquered through a toilet. The garderobe could cost you your throne, and it could cost you your life. Even if you survived the fall, even if no assassin came for you, there was still the problem of the waste. It didn't disappear. It piled up in massive cesspits that had to be emptied by hand. That job belonged to the gong farmers, men who might have had the worst profession in human history. The name comes from the Old English word gong, meaning to go, as in to go to the toilet. These men were social outcasts. They lived on the outskirts of towns, forbidden from entering churches, taverns, or public spaces during daylight hours. The smell clung to them so deeply that no amount of washing could remove it. At night, they climbed down into the pits with shovels and buckets, surrounded by filth in complete darkness. They were forbidden from working during the day because the smell alone could cause riots. Entire neighborhoods would empty if they caught wind, literally, of gong farmers working nearby. But the smell wasn't just unpleasant, it was deadly. Decomposing waste produced methane and hydrogen sulfide gas, both invisible, both lethal. One spark from a lantern could trigger an explosion powerful enough to blow apart the entire pit. Many gong farmers were burned alive before they could even react. In 1326, a gong farmer named Richard the Raker was working in London when he fell through a rotted plank into his own cesspit. He drowned in the filth before anyone could pull him out. His death was recorded in the city's official coroner's reports, a rare acknowledgement of a profession most people pretended didn't exist. Others never saw fire at all. The gases could knock a strong man unconscious in seconds. Your vision would blur, your legs would give out, and if you collapsed while standing waist deep in the pit, you would slip under the surface and never come back up. Your fellow workers couldn't save you. Going in after you meant risking the same fate. So they watched, they waited, and then they pulled your body out hours later. Let me ask you something and answer honestly. Would you take a job like that for 1 year if it paid $1 million? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely want to know where you draw the line. Despite the horror of the work, gong farmers were paid very well by medieval standards. In London, they could earn more in a single night than a skilled craftsman made in a month. But money couldn't buy them respect or safety.
Sometimes, though, the danger wasn't limited to workers. In the year 1184, a disaster unfolded that shocked the entire Holy Roman Empire. King Henry VI hosted a political gathering in the Petersburg Citadel near Erfurt, Germany. It was a diet, a formal assembly where nobles, bishops, and knights gathered to discuss matters of state. Dozens of the most powerful men in the empire crowded into the great hall on the second floor. They were wearing heavy chainmail, layered robes, ceremonial swords, everything that displayed their wealth and status. The wooden floor beneath them was old, weakened by moisture seeping up from the monastery latrine directly below. No one noticed. And then, without warning, the floor collapsed. Not just a plank, not just a section, the entire floor. The nobles fell through the second story, then crashed through the first floor straight into the monastery latrine below. The impact was catastrophic. Men in full armor plunged into a pit of human filth several feet deep. The weight of their clothing pulled them down. They couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't climb out. At least 60 of the most powerful men in the Holy Roman Empire drowned in human waste.
King Henry himself barely survived. He was standing near a stone alcove that held firm. He watched as his allies, his rivals, his advisors all vanished into the pit in front of him. In a single moment, entire bloodlines ended. Power shifted, alliances collapsed, the political landscape of Europe changed, all because of a toilet. Chronicles from the time describe the scene as a vision of hell. The screams, the smell, the sight of armored men thrashing and then going still. Bodies had to be pulled out one by one. Some were so covered in filth they couldn't be identified. Families had to wait days to learn if their fathers, brothers, or sons had died. The disaster became known as the Erfurt Latrine Disaster, the Erfurt Latrine Disaster, and it stands as one of the most grotesque mass deaths in medieval history. If you think that was rare, it wasn't. Smaller-scale collapses happened regularly. They just didn't kill kings and bishops, so they weren't written down. The medieval toilet was also a breeding ground for disease, flies, rats, bacteria no one understood. There were no water traps or barriers to stop insects or animals from climbing back up the shaft. Rats carrying plague-infested fleas could enter bedrooms through the toilet opening itself. At night, while you slept, creatures were using the garderobe as a highway into your living quarters. People believed sickness came from bad air, miasma, and in a way they weren't entirely wrong. The concentrated vapors rising from cesspits were toxic. Breathing them daily weakened immune systems and caused chronic respiratory problems. In monasteries, monks used communal latrines called reredoors, long stone benches with multiple holes where a dozen men sat side by side. No partitions, no privacy. If one man fell ill with dysentery, the entire brotherhood could be infected within days. They wiped themselves with moss, hay, or a shared sponge on a stick called a tersorium, passed from person to person. It was a perfect system for spreading death. Strangely, people even hung their clothes inside toilet shafts, believing the sharp ammonia smell would kill fleas and lice. In a way, they were right. Ammonia is a natural pesticide. But they were also trapping themselves in small stone rooms filled with toxic fumes, holding their breath while they retrieved their cleaned garments. They were trying to solve one problem and unknowingly creating another. The toilet was not just a convenience, it was part of the cycle of life and death. During sieges, it became a weapon. If attackers blocked drainage holes or diverted water sources, waste backed up into the castle itself. Within days, the stench would be unbearable, disease would spread, morale would collapse. Some attackers didn't even need to breach the walls, they just waited for the castle to poison itself from within. Sometimes, attackers even catapulted bodies, dead animals, dead prisoners, or their own plague victims over the walls to accelerate outbreaks. And where do you think those bodies often landed? Directly into the cesspits, contaminating the one place in the castle no one could avoid. The latrine could lose a war. So, the next time you step into a clean, private bathroom and lock the door behind you, take a moment to appreciate it. No wind howling from below, no assassins waiting in the dock, no collapsing floors, no rats climbing towards you while you sit defenseless, no toxic gas, no explosions, no drowning in filth. Just running water, porcelain, and a door that locks. We take it for granted, but for most of human history, answering nature's call was one of the most dangerous things you could do. The medieval toilet was a place of vulnerability, disease, and death. It was a tactical weakness in your defenses, a breeding ground for plague, a trap that could kill you in a dozen different ways. The history of the toilet is filthy and frightening, but it is also proof of how far we've come, and how much we owe to the people who lived and died so we didn't have to. Thank you for watching. And if you want more stories that reveal the hidden dangers of the past, the things they don't teach you in school, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. Because history is full of nightmares, and I'm just getting started.